Pues, hola, buenos días a todos. Soy Petitguyot, trabajo en la Comisión Europea en la unidad de calidad del agua y me encargo en otros temas de la iniciativa para promover la reutilización del agua en Europa. Os agradezco mucho la invitación. Me complace formar parte de vuestra conferencia y presentaros los progresos en esta iniciativa y nuestros planes para el futuro. Tengo que disculparme por no poder estar hoy físicamente con vosotros y también por tener que continuar mi presentación en inglés. So, I will start with telling you a bit on why we started this initiative on water reuse, what is the policy background for such an initiative by the European Commission. And this started with the findings and on water scarcity and drought that continues to affect wide areas in Europe. 14% of the total population of Europe is presently under water stress conditions, at least during summer. And many river basin districts face structural water stress issues. This is mainly true in the Mediterranean area, but this also affects more and more northern regions in Europe and eastern regions. And of course, this is due to increasing pressure from human activities on water resources, mainly by agriculture. And to face and to address this water scarcity and drought issue, the Commission has been looking into water reuse as one potential solution. And the present situation in Europe is that water reuse, although it is an accepted practice in a number of member states, although it is a safe practice in the EU, it remains largely untapped. Today in Europe, the amount of wastewater, treated wastewater, which is reused is about 1 billion cubic meters per year. That means about 2.4% of the total volume of treated effluents. This is more in a number of countries such as Spain, of course, also in Italy and Greece. And this is about 0.4% of annual EU freshwater withdrawals. We mean this is an untapped potential because according to the figures we could compute, we think that a realistic achievable potential is 6 times the current amount, which is, so it would be 6 billion cubic meters per year achievable by the year 2025. And we regard water reuse as a strategic option, which is both beneficial to the environment, of course alleviating water scarcity, but also alleviating pressure from discharge from urban wastewater treatment plants, who can affect severely the streams in summertime, but also a benefit to the economy, providing opportunities for job creation and innovation in a water market which is growing in the world. And this is why we want to promote water reuse as part of a more circular economy where resources would be used more efficiently. Why water reuse is not more developed in Europe? We have identified a number of barriers. First, water reuse is in many cases not considered and integrated appropriately in the broader management of water resources. Water is not considered as an option among others that is to be included and developed. Water reuse is also more complicated because of the additional investments, treatments, infrastructure that are needed, more costly than conventional water resources, especially when water resources are not tariffed or tariffed at very low fee, and also by a large share of the public perceived as more risky than conventional water resources. And this is without any regard to the actual assessment of risks and benefits. Last, we see that water reuse suffers from potential trade barriers when agriculture products that are to be put on the EU internal market are irrigated with water reuse, and that number of project managers may face that these products may face bans on the internal market. So these barriers, we want to address them, and we think it is meaningful to address them at EU level. As regards the insufficient implementation of EU water policies, in particular the Water Framework Directive, but also the Urban Wastewater Treatment Directive and the Nitrates Directive. And also, we want to address the lack of a common approach to risks and of an harmonized legal framework in the EU. Just to briefly mention that water reuse is considered as a valuable option to address water scarcity and to improve water quality in the Sustainable Development Goals that were developed by the United Nations at the end of last year. So you may know that there is a dedicated development goal on water to ensure access to water and sanitation for all, and water reuse is explicitly mentioned in 2 of these targets for this goal, 6, both when it comes to improving water quality by reducing pollution, increasing recycling and safe reuse, but also as regards international cooperation and capacity building in developing countries, as regards wastewater treatment, recycling and reuse technologies. As I mentioned, we want to promote water reuse as part of a more circular economy. In a recent communication of the European Commission last year, water reuse was included in an action plan with a number of committed actions by the Commission. 5 actions listed here. So first, the development of guidelines to guide member states in the EU towards more integration of water reuse in water planning and management, development of a common and harmonized approach on minimum quality requirements for water reuse in irrigation and groundwater recharge, a better consideration for water reuse in industrial activities, also bringing more support to research and innovation, and also for investment in water reuse infrastructure. Now I'm going to tell you briefly on the progress we've made so far and where we want to go. As regards the first action, reuse in integrated water planning and management, we have been developing with member states and organizations in the EU, organizations of users and NGOs. We've been developing guidance on how to share a common understanding of water reuse in the implementation of water legislation. I mentioned the Water Framework Directive, the Urban Wastewater Treatment Directive, the Nitrate Directive. So, and based on this common understanding and also on good practices in EU member states, but also in third countries, how to better integrate and consider this possibility for reusing water into the water planning and management. And these guidelines were endorsed by the water directors in the member states and published in June this year, and they are publicly available. As regards the minimum quality requirements for water use in two of the uses that we think are of the highest potential, and also where the EU has the most added value to act, so irrigation and aquifer recharge, we want to address the lack of coherent and comprehensive legislative framework within the EU, and to come with a proposal for a new legislation in the EU that would ensure a high level of health and environmental protection. But this is more about ensuring that the current high level of protection is maintained, because, as I mentioned, I mean, we consider that reuse practices in the EU are safe. So this is one point, and also to provide better public confidence in reuse practices, and of course provide a sound conditions for investment in these practices. As I mentioned, we will focus on the two uses that we have identified at the most relevance, a few levels, which are agriculture, irrigation, and groundwater recharge. As it is a major initiative for the Commission, as we intend to come with a new legislation, we published kind of a roadmap. We call it the Inception Impact Assessment, and we published in spring this year. We will run a public consultation that will start probably early November, and that will run for 3 months until beginning of next year, to get the feedback from interested stakeholders and citizens in the EU on how we should design this new legal instrument. And we will base our legislative proposal on the technical proposal, which is developed by our colleagues of the Joint Research Center, and this proposal, to ensure that an appropriate protection of health and the environment is ensured, we will consult with 2 dedicated independent scientific committees, one being the Scientific Committee on Health, Environment and Emerging Risk, and also the European Food Safety Authority. This process is, we want it as an open and transparent process, and we will consult regularly the member states and also the organizations all along the process. This has started this year and this will go on next year, because we want to propose this EU legislation by the middle of next year. And I know many people in the room are quite involved in this process, and we are very happy to receive contributions from the people working in Spain on these aspects, where there is a very good and valuable experience. More briefly on industrial activities that we also want to cover, but there we have another piece of legislation in the European Union, which is the Industrial Emission Directive, and we think it's more relevant to look into further integration of water reuse in the development and the review of best available techniques, reference documents, the BREFs, that sets requirements for the industrial sectors. We will use a sectorial approach for this, and we have recent examples in the documents that are that have been just adopted or that are actually worked out, with water reuse being better considered. So here I listed the document on common wastewater and waste gas treatment for the chemical sector, which was published in June last year. Also the document for the rearing of poultry and pigs, which is about to be adopted. And also a very important one on food, drink and milk industry, We've just started the review at the end of last year, and we see that there will be opportunities there to better consider water reuse. Research, innovation are important aspects for water reuse because this is an active field. We think this can enhance the competition of EU companies in a world market. We provide support through the European Innovation Partnership on water, where water reuse is a top priority area. We have a number of action groups that are dedicated to water, and where knowledge is shared and where synergies are created to access funding for research. And in a recent conference of this EIP water reuse was showcased as a promising area. We also want to increase the visibility of funding opportunities in a number of European funds. Horizon 2020, where recent and coming calls include specifically water reuse. Opportunities in the European Regional Development Fund, especially in smart specialization strategies for member states and regions, and also in the LIFE instrument for the environment and climate action, where there can be funding for pilot projects. As regards infrastructure, funding from the EU is also available in different funds, the European Regional Development Fund, the Cohesion Fund, and also the European Agriculture Fund for rural development. And we want to encourage member states to use this opportunity and prioritize water reuse investments. And we are working now with the European Investment Bank, to ensure that there will be opportunities and that in the European Fund for Strategic Investment, and that water reuse projects will be eligible there. Well, this was what I wanted to let you know about the present status of the development of our initiative. I'm sorry I couldn't be with you today. I hope you will have fruitful exchanges in this conference, and I'm happy to give you more information as needed. Here is my email, and you can access also many documents in the European Commission internet website, and I give here the link. Thanks for this invitation again, and have a good conference.